You know that one piece of advice that we hear all the time? The one that's supposed to be the answer to, well, everything. Just be yourself. Follow your heart. Trust your gut. It sounds so simple, doesn't it? So freeing.
But what if your authentic self, the real you deep down, isn't some perfect diamond just waiting to be discovered? What if it's actually, well, a little bit of a mess?
I mean, let's be totally honest with each other for a second. If you really followed every single impulse, every gut feeling all day long, would you be some kind of perfect person? Or would you maybe scroll TikTok for 6 hours, eat an entire pizza all by yourself, skip the gym for, the 5th time this week, and maybe, just maybe, say something to your boss that you would 100% regret later? Yeah, me too.
So, if you're carrying around this constant weight of guilt because you struggle with this stuff, I just want you to take a breath. Seriously, you are not broken. There's nothing fundamentally wrong with you. You're just human.
And it turns out the person who understood this maybe better than anyone lived over 2,000 years ago. He saw all this human chaos and offered a totally different way of looking at it.
His name was Xunzi, an ancient Chinese philosopher, and this was his truth bomb, a line so jarring it's been shaking people up for centuries. Human nature is evil. Goodness is artificial. Whoa. Okay, I know what you're thinking, but hang with me here. This might be the most freeing idea you hear all year.
Now, to really understand what Xunzi was getting at, you have to see him in contrast to his big philosophical rival, Mencius, because they had two completely different pictures of what a human being is.
So for Mencius, we're all born like these perfect little seeds. We have the beginnings of goodness already inside us, and all we need is a little sunshine and water, and we'll naturally grow into good people. But Xunzi, he looked around and said, no way. We're not born like good seeds. We're born like crooked, warped pieces of wood. And if you just leave crooked wood alone, well, it stays crooked.
And Xunzi's proof for this was just brilliant. He said, just look at a toddler. Are little kids naturally selfless? Do they just love to share? Of course not. A toddler is pure, raw human nature. They're all about envy, desire, and what's in it for them. Goodness, he said, isn't something we're born with. It's something we have to learn. It has to be built. Okay, so if we're all just a bunch of crooked logs, what are we supposed to do? Are we just doomed? No. This is where Xunzi's philosophy stops being a bummer and starts being this incredibly useful guide for how to actually live. It's not about accepting our flaws. It's about getting our hands dirty and forging something better.
He basically gave us a carpenter's manual for the soul. Step 1, you steam the wood. You have to soften up that raw, stubborn nature. Step 2, you have to physically bend it against its natural curve. This takes conscious, deliberate effort. And then, and this is the absolute key, step 3, you have to clamp it into its new, straight shape and hold it there.
And that clamp? For Xunzi, that was something he called Li, which we can translate as rituals. Now, he wasn't just talking about fancy ceremonies. He meant the small, daily structures we build for ourselves. Think of them like guardrails that keep our impulsive, crooked nature from driving us right off a cliff.
And you can see this everywhere in your own life. Your crooked impulse is laziness. The straightening ritual, making your bed every single morning. It's an artificial act of creating order. Your impulse is greed. The ritual, waiting until everyone at the dinner table has their food before you take your first bite. Your impulse is aggression. The ritual, forcing yourself to use polite language even when you're seeing red. Every single one of these is a tiny act of bending the wood.
And this all leads to a massive, game-changing idea. Our whole culture tells us to find ourselves, right? Like our best self is some hidden treasure we just have to dig up. Xunzi says that's completely backward. It's a passive fantasy.
Look at the difference here. It's everything. Finding yourself is all about waiting around for motivation to magically appear. It's thinking you're already a finished diamond. But constructing yourself, that's active. That's about building discipline even when, especially when, you feel zero motivation. It's the deep understanding that you aren't finished. You're a work in progress, and you're the artist.
And this is really the heart of it all. Xunzi is warning us that our so-called authentic self, the one that just follows every impulse, isn't some enlightened being. It's basically a primitive animal. But your best self? Oh, that's something else entirely. That's a work of art. It's something you have to carve and steam and hammer into existence every single day. Goodness isn't what we start with. It's our greatest creation.
So this whole idea really boils down to one final, pretty challenging question. A question for all of us, living in this age that practically worships authenticity.
Are you brave enough to stop just following your heart and to start doing the much harder but far more rewarding work of training it instead?
Subscribe for daily wisdom.